So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Top Talk guest photography session. Hi, James. I know there. How you doing, mate?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm very good, and it seems like it's been a while, so it's really good to be chatting to you again, mate. I think it was in
Thank
the
you.
summer we saw you last, or just before the summer. So, very
Yeah, I did a shoot. Yeah, I did some shoots in the woods in Wales for you, if I remember.
well. I remember that you were
Um,
brave enough to go out into the woods, and I was clever enough to stay inside and everything. But excellent, yeah, it was really good. But yeah, we haven't
good
had
fun.
you back this year, so we need to make sure that happens in 2018 and
Yes.
get you back. Absolutely, pal. James, just for the people who might not be familiar with you, just quickly, just give us a little bit of a rundown about you, your photography, and sort of the two kind of very different genres that we know you for, really.
I shoot everything from wrestlers to babies and nothing in between. So God knows how I make a business and a living out of that. But we've got to the end of another year, so which we're delighted about. The house hasn't been repossessed, so yeah, we're gold. Yeah, no, it's just two really interesting sort of genres, I suppose, sort of niches. And I kind of wanted to talk about that today, just about like how, not how I've managed to sort of build two businesses that are so different within the same sort of photography spectrum, I suppose, but how I've built it up from not a lot because I don't often, I mean, I genuinely don't get a lot of kit envy or like gear envy, really. And I think that's sort of reflected in the way that I've built up the business. And it's only from sort of putting this presentation together that I've realized quite how quite how I've done that on a really, really tight budget. And I think that there are more important things in photography rather than worrying about, your next lens. Do you know what I mean? Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
perfect, mate.
I want to try and impart that knowledge a little bit today. That's what I want to try and get across, I think.
Excellent. Well, I mean, every time we've had you on board, there's always been absolute priceless information shared. So thrilled to have you back, mate. Obviously,
Cool.
guys, we want you to interact with James and I. Obviously, also James outside of here, you've got his website information and Instagram and Twitter there. Obviously, we're doing tonight in conjunction with our friends also at the Society. So you are speaking for them in January at the convention. I know we're going to talk a bit more detail at the end about that, but I'll be sharing the links with the guys about your classes that you've got going on there, and we'll discuss those
Thank
at
you.
length after the presentation, mate. So what I'm going to do, rather than waste any time, mate, is I'm going to give you the screen. So it's going to come over to you now.
Thanks very much. Oh, thank you very much. Listen, thank you so much to everyone who's come out. Well, I say come out because it's it's a webinar. So for everyone who's logged in from their homes or mobile devices or tablets or laptops or whatever you've decided to join us, 4 days before Christmas, I genuinely thought that people would have more important things to be doing, and to see so many people and so much positive feedback throughout the day when I announced this presentation is really heartwarming. A special welcome to anyone who's joined me from our wrestling photography group, and a very special welcome to Christine, who's joined us from Twitter and sent me a tweet saying how excited she was. So thank you very much for that, and thank you to everyone else who's on board this evening. I hope to keep this light and entertaining and informative for you. As it states on the screen in front of you, from wrestlers to babies, lighting on a budget. This is the basis of this presentation. It's also the basis of the superclass that I'm doing in January at the Societies. Fair warning up front, the purpose of this webinar is to inform and hopefully slightly entertain you, but it is also to promote this superclass, which I'm putting on, a 4-hour live shoot with me. I'm basically, the premise of the superclass is that I'm going to take £75 into B&Q and buy as many different types of lights as I can with that 75 quid, and then try and spend 4 hours photographing some wrestlers from London live, and also allow other photographers to come in and take their own pictures with these budget lights. So don't expect Ellincrom to get on board anytime soon with this particular seminar, but it should be a lot of fun. The two images you see up on the screen in front of you are of the Ring of Honor, previously the Ring of Honor television world champion Marty Skrull on the left. That's an image that I entered for the MPA Awards this year. My highest scoring image of the year, scored just shy of 90 out of 100, which I was very surprised about. And then little Donald on the right-hand side, little baby from the studio, and it just sort of like highlights how techniques and lighting sort of things that I've done with lights in my wrestling project are sort of transferred nicely to my newborn and baby project to not only create stylish images, but images that make us money. I start off every seminar as in the same way as I do with every other seminar that I've put on. I answer some basic photographer questions that I get asked by photographers all the time up and down the country whenever I do talks or seminars or anything like that and look for advice. These are the answers to some basic photographer questions. Let's go with this. Answers to questions. I shoot Canon and Olympus a little bit. I've got a Canon EOS 5D Mark III, some or other. It's got loads of buttons on it. It went wrong at the weekend. The SD card broke, so I had to use the other card slot. Luckily, it's got 2 card slots, so I could use it. My backup camera is a 7D. That one's also gone wrong recently because the battery, it's not recognizing the battery, so it can't tell me how much power the battery has, and it could go off at any moment. Other than that, I've had 18 years unblemished, an unblemished record of working with Canons for those 18 years, but just this past weekend they've both gone a little bit wrong. But they're mechanical things, they will go wrong, so always have a backup, and my backup is my Olympus. I'm playing around with the pen, the Olympus PEN. I got that because my wife liked it, it looked good. I also have an Olympus OMD 10 or something or other, something like that. I got that because I quite like the look of it. And they're quite small, and they're really quiet, and they're mirrorless, and they're vintage looking, and people are interested in them. The problem with the Olympuses is I have massive hands. They are tiny cameras. They look like toys in my hands. No one takes me seriously. I was given some advice when I shot my first wedding back into, when was it? 1998. I shot my first wedding, and a photographer friend of mine said to me, take all your gear, take this. He gave me a hammerhead flash, attach that to your camera. Don't bother turning it on, but just take it, because the more gear you've got, the more people will believe that you're a proper photographer, which is where I struggle with these mirrorless cameras. If you turn up at a wedding with a tiny camera and big hands, I'm not sure people genuinely sort of know sort of what you're doing. But I do like the stylish look of them, and they look good when you're doing sort of travel photography, I suppose. I use ISOs, shutter speeds, and apertures. Those are the things I use to control my images. Those are the very first things I learned about in photography when I studied photography at school. They are the things that I still use to this day, and they are the things that enable me to be hopefully a professional photographer for my clients. I generally use lenses. I don't, like I say, particularly have lens envy. I don't have to use a Canon lens on a Canon body, although I do prefer to. I think it look nice. I think they do work generally better. I went through a phase of working with just prime lenses and came out of that phase about 18 months later. But it was a good phase to go through. It allowed me to think about my images and think about cropping and think about what I was doing with sort of like these fixed focal lengths. So I had to sort of move my body rather than the lens itself. I'm a bit lazier these days. So I use, what is it? I use like a 24-70 in studio, but then I've gone back to my 24-105, which because I quite like the slightly longer range on that one. But they're both the L series. They've both got quite wide apertures, so they allow me to let in a lot of light into the camera. And storytelling is my goal. I talk about this a lot in my seminars. I believe photography is like 2 things. Firstly, it's the art of drawing with light. That is what literally the word photography translates to. And secondly, it's about storytelling. It's about telling something with your stories, whether it's just a picture of a cute baby smiling, looking at the camera, or whether you're telling, trying to tell something deeper, trying to have a narrative. If whatever the emotion that a photograph elicits to you, either whether it's just like a really clean professional image, or whether it's something that makes you feel happy, or something that elicits a different reaction, a different emotional response, that's our responsibility as photographers, is to be storytellers. This weekend I shot for a company, and in 36 hours I was asked to do 5 different things. I'm just going to show you those 5 different things now. I was asked to do ringside photography, which is essentially sports photography. I was asked to do skyline photography for sort of stock photography for sort of match graphics and things. So I was asked to essentially go out and be a landscape photographer. I was asked to do product photography to showcase the championship belts for a new shop. I was asked to do creative portraits, and I was also asked to do sort of stock portraits, sort of more more bendable, usable ones. Nothing too creative, nothing cropped in, nothing with too much different lighting. Everything had to look the same. In my mind, they're 5 completely different skill sets, and it's only the fact that I left a high street studio environment in 2010 where I was working to go and work on my own, that I actually in the last 7 years have learned these skills by putting myself in the marketplace as a freelance photographer, and by having to take every job that comes my way. Ultimately, because I've done that, I've taken myself out of this fixed studio environment. The studio environment I previously worked in was a high key studio environment, so essentially I was really only taught to shoot one way, and that was high key photography, and I could do high key photography pretty well. and I thought I knew it all, and it wasn't until I went self-employed and put myself in the outside world that I realized that I didn't sort of know it all at all. Your sort of sports photography here requires good use of a camera with a good sensitivity to ISO. It requires you to change your camera settings so that you're using fast shutter speeds to freeze action. Your landscape photography over here requires preparation. It requires research. It requires understanding about how light works at specific times of the day and working out where you need to be in relation to that. This simply isn't an image of a skyline taken from the land. I had to get on a boat to do this image, and I had to make sure the boat was booked at the right time of day, and also had to work out what temperature it was going to be on the boat. It was actually colder than than I'd prepared for, but all these factors had to sort of factor in, so I knew I had to be in this exact spot on this boat, which I couldn't control because the boat was on a cruise, to actually get that image with this perfectly blue sort of skyline there. Your stock photography images require sort of nice smaller apertures for increased depth of field, really good intricate control of lighting and softboxes to sort of take away reflections and get you a clean, usable image. The creative portrait side requires a little bit of connection with the sitter, a connection with the person that you're working with, and often you don't have long, particularly in the wrestling environment that I shoot for. Sometimes you only get sort of 30 seconds before a match to make a connection with the person and to get that character who's sometimes someone that you've never met before, or indeed never seen work before, so you don't know what their character is. You have about 30 seconds to work out what their character is, what their story is, and what they're trying to tell, work out where you're going to put the lights, and quickly get them to trust you, because you're going to ask them to do things in that image and to pose in certain ways. And then the stock photography just requires a bit of control and efficiency, really, and professionalism, which is a lot of it's people skills more so than sort of, I guess, photography skills, I guess. But then each different photograph in that set requires a different skill set, and that was within the 36-hour period I was asked to do that. This is my studio space here in Portsmouth, down on the south coast, if anyone's interested. So this is what I moved from my high street studio with big high ceilings and big wide walls and loads of lights down to this. This is a small loft conversion above a studio, above a terraced house in Portsmouth. Literally here, you can see this area here. This is the only area in the studio I can stand up in because of the sloping roof. We decided, after working in this studio for about 2 years, shooting anything and everything, we decided that it was a perfect space for mum, dad and baby, and that maybe after a weekend of shooting families, the biggest family of which was 22 people, including a sort of 3-day-old newborn baby, toddlers, teenagers, and everything in between. And beyond that, obviously, grandparents, and I think there was a dog in that shoot as well. We decided after that weekend to maybe just come down and do newborns, and that's why we now shoot almost exclusively babies and wrestlers. Because I went self-employed and left a job, I didn't have a whole heap of money. It wasn't like I left with like oodles and oodles of cash in the bank that I could suddenly just decide, yeah, I'm going to buy the latest camera and the latest lights, and I'm going to also have time to invest on marketing. I literally didn't have any money to invest on anything. The first lights that I had in the studio were these. In fact, the RX4, so we've got the D-Light 2 and the D-Light 4. The D-Light 4, I'm going to come on to in a minute. The D-Light 2 I acquired, and look at the state of it. It's so beaten up now, but it still works. It's an amazing thing about it. The D-Light 2 is the cheapest bottom rung Elinchrom sort of plug in the wall light that you can get, flash head that you can get. I acquired those in 2006 after photographing a friend's New Year's Eve party for free. And I refused to take payment because he was a good friend. He refused for me to turn up for free. So as a thank you, he purchased the lights that I could use on the night to photograph people on their arrival. And it was a big sort of James Bond party. It's about 250 guests. They all came in and had their photographs shot with me. And that was how I acquired my first set of lights. So I didn't have to buy them, but I did have to work for them. They still work to this day, which is really cool. I upgraded to the RX4s because they were just getting a little bit beaten up. And I didn't pay the full amount for the RX4s. What I did was something that was sort of a little bit of knowledge that was passed down to me. If you go to a trade show, of which there are sort of many up and down the country, certainly in the UK, If you have the ability to go to a trade show and meet suppliers and meet people in the trade, go on the last day when they're trying to meet their sales targets and ask to see if they've got any display stock or anything that they've been using for their shoots on the day, and you'll often find that you'll get a discount. I think I got around about 30% discount off of the RX4s, which was really cool, but it was the most amount of money I'd ever spent on light. They still work to this day, and they are the 2 lights that I essentially use in studio. To be clear, before buying the RX4s, I had 2 D-Light 2s. Now I use 2 RX4s, if that makes sense. So these are just in a case somewhere to use in an emergency if something goes wrong. A couple of years ago, I had a good Christmas in terms of sales orders. So as a treat to myself, I bought myself an ice light with, I believe, a discount code that I found online. So I still didn't pay sort of full price for that. The ice light is super useful for 2 reasons. One, it does provide a really, really clean source of sort of fluorescent light, and it's very sort of transportable as a light source, but mainly the reason why I like the ice light is because it's like a lightsaber, and anytime I bring it out at a wedding or a shoot where there are any sort of blokes around, guaranteed someone will make the noise of a lightsaber and ask to hold it and then wave it around. I've used ice lights not only for photography but also for videography. I think they're really, really smart. I appreciate that there are cheaper sort of models on the market, but the ice lights never let me down. It's perfectly reliable, and I just think it's a cool bit of kit, and it's the only lighting sort of gimmick that I've ever spent any money on. We will go to B&Q for my seminar, and we will find a cheap alternative for an ice light that we could plug into a wall and see how good it is. We'll see how it compares. The last bit of lighting kit that I use is this. This is a Elastilite sort of softbox that opens up the Elastilite softbox into sort of like a 1 meter square. On the left-hand side is a silver reflector. The Elastilite softbox, I think I got on a Society's discount again. I certainly got money off of that. The reflector was free because I joined up a photographic organization and I had the choice of like a bag or a reflector, so I chose a reflector, so that was free. And then the Canon 600EX head, the speed light, I got from abroad, so I got about £200 off of that. But I only got that recently. Up until then, I was using like a really cheap Sigma model, which was like £150. And the receivers to this day are still cheap, like £10 receivers and transmitters that I bought off of eBay. So ultimately the cost of that isn't so much. This is my mobile flash lighting kit. So instead of taking my D-lights which plug into the wall, this is what I would take on location for like a wrestler shoot. Literally plug the flash head into the softbox, use the reflector to reflect the light, and bang, you've got yourself a 2-light studio set up. Yes, that's right, a reflector is a light. I'm going to go through now like some images that I've taken with various combinations of these lights, and maybe share with you some lighting diagrams for them. All of these images that I'm going to show you are images that have sort of won or been noted or merited for awards. I think awards are really useful. That's the way I choose to view them. Other photographers maybe not so. Some people obsessively hunt for them. I'm a guy who understands the value of using them in as a marketing exercise. I certainly noticed my sales and my sort of client leads jump when I won my first award in 2012. And my first award in 2012 I won with this image. This is little Elizabeth. She was, I believe, like, I think 4 to 5 months old in this picture. It's a newborn shot, just taken in a white blanket, shot it in 2012. And it's a reminder to me, this image, that in newborn or baby or even just child portraiture, there's a trend at the moment. I say at the moment, there's been a trend over the last 4 to 5 years maybe to take pictures, more classical vintage pictures of children looking mournfully into the camera. Certain photographers within the UK do it excellently, and with a unique sense of style. Certain photographers in the UK maybe don't do it so well. I once again, provided it evokes some sort of feeling in you, some sort of storytelling, then it's a good image. However, having said that, there is nothing in the years that I've been shooting since I started professionally in 2003 to disprove the theory that people will buy pictures of their children looking at the camera smiling. My son's school photo came through the other day, and it's just the most obvious, simple, traditional photo you could imagine, just like nothing I haven't seen before, but because it's of my son looking at me through that frame smiling, it's utterly priceless, and I burst into tears when I saw it. Even the one the previous year where his head, where the lighting was terrible and the color processing was awful and his hair was a bit ginger and he had his fake smile on, I still bought it. That industry of school photography it is apocalypse proof, honestly. However, this shot of Elizabeth here, just absolutely gorgeous. Simple white blanket around the outside. I still only have in studio here maybe 6 blankets for babies, and I go into studios where other like newborn photographers who are new to the industry and have spent money on training have been sold the dream and the experience that they need a blanket wall the size of one wall in their studio that features every shade and every hue of color imaginable, so that you've got everything for every occasion. I've kept a newborn business going on the strength of a white blanket, a brown blanket, a grey blanket, a black blanket, a pink blanket, and a blue blanket. And that's literally it. I've got all of the tonalities for my monochrome. I've got a lovely neutral blue color. Sorry, a lovely neutral brown color that's really rustic, and I've got a pink and a blue. And what I try and do is I'm trying to get people to bring their own stuff into studio for their newborn shoots, their own blankets that have been made by Nan, and we're going to come on to that in a minute. The lighting diagram for this, hopefully, is going to come up here. There we go. This is simple, right? So this is how the lighting diagram works here. So this is me with a camera. I'm stood over the baby, who's in a bean bag, who's with the blanket over the top, wrapped around. The softbox is literally just over the head and pointing down at just shallower than 45 degrees towards the subject on the floor. So we've created a little light tent. I like to work with lights fairly close to the subject. So this light's maybe no more than 75 centimeters to a meter away from this subject here to give us a nice even spill of light. But that's the first time I won an award. That this image won me Newborn Photographer of the Year for the South region of the MPA, and we marketed the hell out of that on Facebook to get in new leads. Next image is of the little drummer boy. Once again, this was shot in the studio that you saw before. The lighting setup for this is real simple. I've used a DJ deck here to simulate drums, but I'm on the floor looking at the kid who's just over sort of 6 months of age, so just sitting up and just able to start to climb and clamber up on stuff. Got one light head pointing at the back of the studio. We've brought the baby off the back wall so to reduce the spill as much as possible, and then my larger kit softbox is being used to light from more or less this. It's slightly in the wrong place. This light should be over here and just pointing down towards the subject, but it's just giving me an even source of light across the whole face. This background light here maybe we'll be shooting at a meter of f16 and our main light shooting at f8, and that's literally it. As you'll see, if I go back to the studio setup, everything's been painted white, and I've got a white floor down on the floor as well. So this all acts as a natural sort of, it's just like a natural softbox, so light's bouncing everywhere. So sometimes impossible to control in low key situations, but in high key situations it actually gives you a really sort of simple even source of light. This is a beauty. This one I shot back in 2013, I think the year after I won sort of like my first batch of awards regionally. This one was my first image to sort of place in the nationals, and I got robbed of Newborn Photographer of the Year. I say robbed. That's maybe a bit strong. No, I got robbed. But this shot here, this baby was 6 months old and was teething at the time, and this is literally the only like image we got from the shoot that wasn't like really like that wasn't the baby crying or upset, and thankfully the lady who came in for the shoot had previously worked at a photo studio, so she understood like how to prepare for a session and how not just to bring a baby along with just a random assortment of props. She said, oh no, I've bought this like waistcoat and the tie and I want him to look really cool. And he just brought his hand up to the waistcoat, and I don't know why he did it. And just with that expression, he just looks like an old businessman now, and I really like it. To simulate this, what I've done is like this gold reflector I've put here is actually like the background. So the background is just a sheet of fabric that I bought from a local discount store around the corner from me. That's always got fabric on offer, and I hung it from the back wall by Velcro. The kid sat on the floor, so just over 6 months old, so can sit up on his own, provided mum's close just in case we have any accidents. And my two lights are super close to each other. You've got your fill light here shooting at about f8, and then the main light here. Actually, no, tell a lie. fill light here shooting at about f5.6, main light here shooting about f8, shooting at f8 through the camera, and because we're quite a way back from that background sort of lost in the depth of field, and all the sharpness, as it should be, is on those eyes. That's all about expression, that one. This is one of my first sort of corporate jobs that I got when I went self-employed. I was asked to take images for a local academy school. And this is one of the first tricks that I learned in photography when I was studying at school, just to play around with shutter speeds. And I used to go, you know, find a river, find anything, go down by the sea in Bournemouth and just photograph stuff moving, and play with lights and play with moving the camera around on a tripod, and dragging lights from buildings across from one another, and then, you know, just getting really excited when you took the film to the developers, and waiting 2 days because I couldn't afford the hour processing fee, so I had to wait 48 hours for it to come back and then seeing it. So like using slow shutter speeds is, you know, one of the first times that I've is one of the first tricks that I've learned. This is an entirely contrived shot. The window light is on the left hand side here, just coming across the head teacher's sort of face and body there. The kids have been told where to move, so I've literally shouted 3, 2, 1, go, and I've got them to move as quickly as possible because I can't have any camera shake. I think I got away with a 30th of a second here because it was like quite wide, the angle. So the wider the angle, the more sort of leeway you have on shutter speeds. So because the head teacher knew that she had to stay still and look straight at me, she's pin sharp, and everyone else around them is sort of moving, which sort of, again, it's telling a story of someone who's in control despite the chaos going on around her. That's what you're trying to sort of get across with sort of like a headmistress in this shot. Because they were so impressed with this, they invited me back the next year, which is more business. I made sure that, you know, when I handed over the images, I was there and I got their feedback and maintained a positive connection. And when I went back the next year, I got the opportunity to shoot the new sixth form that was opening, so promo shots for that basically. And this was sort of like my first foray into sort of like low-key photography, I guess, and something that I wanted to do later on for qualifications and later on to sort of make a business out of it for wrestling promo work. These kids were, you know, just brought in. They're all shot independent of each other so that I know the lighting is the same on each one. Here's the lighting setup for this one. So I managed to get 2 strip boxes super cheap at a trade show, and I think this is the only time I've used them. So these are like 1.5 meter wide panoramic soft boxes on either side here, with the black backdrop behind, subjects in the middle, camera here, and then just the light right above my head, just shooting down an even light source right over the top. So the main thing that I'm trying to get here is this sort of separation light on the side of the face and the side of the body to give it that sort of modern, sort of almost like a businessy like type look for these kids going into sixth form, that sort of coming of age kind of thing, I guess, and trying to make a sixth form look professional and like it's about, you know, these are the academic elite, you know, going for their next level of, you know, qualifications, ready to sort of go to university, I guess, that sort of preparatory thing. So that's the story you're trying to tell there. Back in the studio, we have little Kelly here. This is another image that scored in the national awards, got shortlisted for classical portrait, and I got completely mugged off by Lisa Visser this year, as I pretty much have done every year. I'm absolutely to be delighted to finish second to her, because she is an absolutely amazing, wonderful, emotive photographer, and every time I see one of her images, I'm absolutely floored by it. This isn't a patch on one of hers, but what I have done here is I've put some time and effort and work into understanding color. And understanding color combinations. So we've essentially just used complementary colors here. So a green gel has been used on the backdrop. I used just a standard sort of small hood over the end of my Elinchrom sort of 2 head. And I think I got that head off a mate who didn't want it anymore. So that didn't cost me anything. And I borrowed, and I think I just accrued some gels over a period of time. So that's got a green gel over it, which is lighting this backdrop, which is again another piece of fabric that I've purchased from a fabric store down the road. And then with the red head gimmick and the red jacket, it sort of separates it, really gives an element of color. I love the way the hair is covering the eye on this side. Little hair light here just gives a bit more separation, and then the main light just over the top as well. So it's a 3 light setup for that one, but it's certainly one that I kind of yeah, it's one that's taken a little bit more effort. There's lights all over the place in the studio. It's quite a small space, but we're making the most of what we've got. And again, this was shot, you know, above in a little loft conversion above a terraced house in Portsmouth. Next one is using the same backdrop, but we've just placed it on the floor. And I just like the idea of of Helen here, the mum with her daughter, just sort of looking, and I just managed to, by playing a game of Peekaboo, which is like this is almost like baby photography 101. Like rule one is just check your ego at the door. Forget about having any sense of dignity when you go in to shoot newborn images. It's all about playing peekaboo. It's all about rolling around. It's all about not worrying about being covered in sick or anything else that comes out of any other end of a baby. It's about just doing everything you can to get that connection with the baby. I just thought it was just an interesting angle on a shot that I'd not seen before from a mother and baby, and I like the use of the backdrop on the floor just to give an element of texture to the picture. Single light setup that time. The light somewhere over here where I'm waving the mouse over there, quite high up, and just sort of shooting down over to sort of give us that even light across the face. Real simple shot. Going into low-key pictures of babies and going back to what I was saying earlier, this is a shot of a pair of twins. These little babbas were like £3 and change each. They weren't very big at all, and they brought this blanket along that had been knitted by Nan, and that's why I err towards the side of prepping my clients for their baby shoots to bring stuff along with them, because that's personalization. That's using something and creating a personal image, creating an heirloom, creating something that's going to stand the test of time, not reaching into your box of gimmicks at the back of the studio and working out which color combination of pastel, blankets and stuff is going to work best for you. Actually taking something that generationally someone has made for these two children that will get passed down the years, and that's quite an emotional thing to sort of capture in my mind. Twins, I don't know what it is about them when they're this age, but they just sleep. And I often get asked the question, oh my God, how'd you get them to sleep and stay still? It's actually easier than you think. Main rules of like newborn photography: keep your room as warm as you can possibly stand. Generally, if you're not sweating, it's not warm enough. Those babies, up until 3 days before this shoot, were used to a temperature of 38 degrees C. Most room temperatures are around about 20, 21 degrees C. So that's a big difference of 17 degrees. So I try and make it as warm as possible, play a little bit of white noise, and allow plenty of time for the session. These babies are down on the floor with a couple of changing mats under them just to keep it nice and soft. We've laid a black blanket down. We've laid the rug on top of the blanket that's been handmade on top of them, and then we just sort of wrap them up in it and just create this sort of angel wings effect to sort of create an air of symmetry within the picture. And then we just turn them towards each other and been lucky enough to get them to hold hands and both be asleep there. It's a really cute image, that. That's one that's up on the wall in the studio, so that when people come to my studio, they know what sort of images to expect from my newborn photography. They know that I'm not going to go and get a load of baskets and leaves and blankets and flowers and petals and do some cheap Anne Geddes takeoff from like 1992. They're going to get personalization. They're going to get low key. They're going to get sort of, black and white standard images. Going into the next one. Single light setup again, cheap blanket hung from the back wall on Velcro again, come off the back wall again to allow us a little bit of depth of field, a little bit of separation, and just go for an expression that isn't a smile. You will find, I have a rule in newborn photography that if the baby's crying, take a picture of it and then stop the shoot and try and amend it, but definitely take a picture of a cry. You may not sell it as your big 30 by 20, but an image of a baby crying you may sell as a little 7 by 5. And if you can add a 7 by 5 or a 10 by 8 to every order that comes through your studio, that's an increase on your average order year on year. And just from experience, these sort of sad, melancholy pictures kind of work really, really nicely. This is just a simple kit softbox again, just over my head, right there on sort of 10 o'clock on the iris, which is iris and pupil cross line, which is sort of perfect positioning. And I just utterly adore that expression, especially with the additional touch of the bow tie. Storytelling, little elements, that's what we're trying to do with that one. The next one's been done to death, but I'll just show you sort of like how I shoot this style of shot. It's a really nice shot to do with a newborn baby if mum and dad don't want to be in the shot. And it's a way for them to be in it without being in it, because quite often what we don't understand when we see seminars from celebrity photographers who used to live in Australia and now live in America is that they will get mums in who are model hungry. They are model ready. They are hair and stylized and ready to go. And if you can create a business model that attracts that sort of person and that can facilitate the need for that sort of person, Godspeed, more power to you. But generally that isn't the case. generally when people have just, 3 days out of giving birth, like my wife took 2.5 years to vocalize her thoughts about the birth of our first child. 2.5 years just to talk about it to me. That's how long it took her to emotionally get over that. And sometimes I think we sometimes take it for granted that they want to be in the photos. Obviously some do, but the majority of people are tired, they are worn out, and they have come to you for, like I always make the joke, like, come along, have a cup of tea, like that's warm for once, and just have a little nap, and I'll take baby off your hands, and we'll do a few photos and give you a little bit of respite. This is a simple shot to do. You need to make sure you have a safe environment. What I do is I place a beanbag underneath here, so that, and we're never lifted much more than 10 centimeters away from the beanbag. We make sure that the hands have a secure support for the head, mainly the heaviest part of the body. We place the light behind and over the top of the baby to give us this rim light, and on top of the beanbag I place the silver reflector to give us these little patches of light of the hands underneath, with the black curtain behind to give us that black backdrop. Simple newborn photography. Make sure all the bits are covered, and just have a little bit of fun with that one. These are images from the first qualification I went for. So again, simple studio setup. How many lights are involved in this? Well, just the one, slightly to the right hand side at 45 degrees. And it's pretty much what I've based the majority of my work going forward from this panel on since 2000, and I want to say 2013. So this was part of my associateship panel where I decided to shoot 20 different people on black backgrounds in square crops in black and white. And these are two of the first people that I shot. This is Kelly and James. They are a pair of professional ballroom dancers. What do we do when we shoot a pair of professional ballroom dancers for a panel of 20 images? Well, we split them up so that instead of having 19 images to shoot, we have 18 images to shoot. This is almost like a cheat for me to do a panel like this with professional dancers, because professional dancers know how to pose, how to hold themselves. They're not shy. They are, like I say, model ready. They're ready to go. And this is one of the easiest shoots that I've had to do. It just evokes a lot of emotion, and they also bring the dresses and everything else with them. We're going to come back to Kelly and James later on. It's important that we remember them. Going on to this one, this is Cassie, who we met at a dance school. Once again, I've actually got a lighting diagram for this one. We have got a silver reflector on this side, just to bounce a little bit of light back into the face, because this was shot in a big open gymnasium where I was shooting a show. I'm going to talk about that again in a minute. So there was no real bounce light anywhere, unlike my studio, which is like a huge softbox. There was no bounce light. I just had my black backdrop. So it's been broad lit on this side of the face here, 45-degree light sort of coming across, f8 on that, coming across the face, and this is a tiny little reflector just to pick out a little bit of detail here, just so it doesn't go into complete blackness. It's just a little bit of bounce light back in. The next one is of Jeffrey. Jeffrey was referred to me. I would never have met him. Look at that, the man with a web and a spider tattoo across his face. Just an amazing character. I never would have met him had I not agreed to shoot my MP during, I believe, the 2010 election, which was the election that went to the coalition government. And because I'd just gone self-employed and I literally had no work that summer because I had no leads and I had no customers, I had to go out and find it. And I thought, well, there's an election on. Portsmouth's a bit of a battleground. There might be some important MPs. I can get some pictures of some important MPs. And I did. I got pictures of Liam Fox came down to Portsmouth. Damien Green, who's in the news at the moment, came down to Portsmouth. He was delightful. And then I got introduced to this guy. And what this guy's Jeff. He's a leaflet dropper. He's a canvasser, so he literally just goes around dropping those leaflets that you get around about election time through your doorway. And this guy went down from 20 stone to 14.5 stone by walking the streets of Portsmouth, dropping those leaflets, which is just an amazing story to me. And I wanted to get him into the studio. This is a two lights set up either side of the face here, one here, simple, two square soft boxes, and they're just sort of coming across to give us this sort of symmetrical form of lighting, which isn't quite straight on, a bit unnerving, but like the lighting's irrelevant. Like, how often are you going to get to photograph a guy with tattoos like that? Utterly fascinating, and a simple shoot. That shoot took 3 minutes. Simple. One of the easiest shoots I've ever done. This is my father-in-law, who needed a new portrait commissioned for his diocese where he was, because he's a genuine vicar, and he's a vicar for 364 days of the year. and then he works one day of the year as something else. I'll let you guess what that is. This is a 2-light, I think this is a 3-light, no, it's a 2-light setup. So I've got a reflector down here, bouncing light in on the hand and in on the lower part of the outfit. I've got the main light over here, just sort of coming across the face, and then I've got a light that I've popped up over the top of the black backdrop. It's just coming down on that hair, just to give us a little bit of lighting there. But I just wanted to show you how, like, I've essentially done 3 lighting setups for the same panel of work. So they're all lit sort of 3 different ways, but then they all sort of sit within the same sort of brief, really. This is one of the dancers from the same dance show that I went to. This is just a little story about sticking to your guns. When I was asked to shoot this dance show, I was shooting for my associateship panel at the time, which I knew had to be black and white. I knew it had to be low key, and I knew they had to be square. So I kind of stuck to my guns on this, and I got invited to this dance show, which was filled wall-to-wall sequins and fake eyelashes, kids from the ages of 5 all the way up to the ages of 16. And like and they'd had like 10 years of inviting photographers down, and photographers bringing a white backdrop, flooding that white backdrop with as much light as they could possibly get out of the national grid to light it, and then having them smiling and pointing and stuff. And I didn't do that. I did moody pictures. I did pictures where they're not looking at the camera. I did it in black and white and didn't give them a color option. I lost a hell of a lot of money and a hell of a lot of work through that. But what I did get through that is a couple of clients who've come back time after time to me, regular clients who understood what I was trying to do, and I did get a load of images that I could use for the panel as well. And I'm quite pleased that I did that. The problem with doing it the other way is that you'll get invited back next year to do it that way, which isn't the way that you want to build your brand. And that's a problem. Sticking by your guns means that, okay, the guys that don't like you and don't want you, they can go elsewhere and go and find someone else who will do that for you. But the guys who do want you can only come to you for that. So that's how you get reciprocal business, and that's how you get customer loyalty. Customers that come back time after time are so important to me. Next one is a dance image that I shot in my studio from a dancer that came to us. She's quite tall, and she's like she goes to stage school, and her mum brought her along. And I kept telling them on the phone call, I do work in a loft conversion. There isn't a lot of space. So if you're expecting me to like have you jump around and do amazing jumpy things, that's not going to happen. And they're like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, we've been recommended, you're amazing, we've seen the style of stuff, so we definitely want to come and see you. And then as soon as they turned up, they said, right, so then they showed me all these images of these girls launching themselves in the air with ribbons and fabric and dust and all this sort of stuff that I'd love to do, but I just genuinely can't do it in the studio space that I've got. This image here is a cheat. I have to thank Simon John for this image, because I originally sent this image through in the way that it was shot, which is this. So essentially what the lady's done in my studio, she's done a tuck jump. So she should literally launched herself up from here, from this base, launched the legs up to her, bent herself down like this, and just created this image here, which is kind of striking. The original image has her other leg coming out here. She's just done sort of like almost like a split jump. I've deleted that leg to take that out, and I twisted it around to make it look like she was falling. But that's still photography. It's not cheating. The only element of Photoshop is just removing that leg, and all you've done is just change the perspective and the way that someone could potentially view that. The next image we're going to look at is one of the first images from my Portrait of a Wrestler project. This is a fella named Gimmicks, a mute wrestler from Southampton. A wonderful character, now retired, sadly. He used to come to the ring. He's a mute, so he didn't say anything, and he had bells on his costumes, and he didn't have any entrance music, so all you heard was this little jingle jangle. And he's a natural showman. He brought like all these little magic tricks and all these little things to the shoot that just made it so interesting. And what I did for the Portrait of a Wrestler project, to make it look a little bit different from my fellowship project, or my associateship project, which was this. I needed to go up to the next stage for fellowship. I bought a dry ice machine, and this is none of this is sort of photoshopped in. This is all legitimately off of a dry ice machine that I bought off of £15 from eBay. Again, not an expensive purchase. 2 lights set up, one behind. You can see some of the rim light on the glove and on the cheek here, but it's just right behind to light the dry ice, and then the main light just in front, 45 degrees. Beautiful expression, makeup's all done, absolutely perfect. I could talk for an hour about Gimmicks, I'm not going to. The reason why I've brought this up is because it allowed me to develop a skill set that I could use in my day-to-day work, and the day-to-day work is maternity portraits. And again, we're telling stories. Similar lighting setup, we've moved the light around a little bit more to give us a bit more of a rim light. But again, we've bought a spotlight behind her just here, which is lighting all of this dry ice behind. And then in Photoshop afterwards, I've literally just colored that dry ice. I think I put a pink gel on it, because I think I knew the gender of the baby, but she didn't want anyone to know. But she did want to put an image like on her Facebook to sort of like go, oh, what is it, sort of thing. So what I did was I lit it with a pink gel so it was all lit, and then I just literally photoshopped the left-hand side, selected all the dry ice, and just changed that hue to blue. And then that's your story. Your story's told. What's it going to be? I don't. Can you still do that in 2017? Can you still say pinks for a girl and blues for a boy? Are we all fluid now? I think we're fluid now. Let's not get into that. I warned you this might happen. Next is the slide from the beginning. We're just showing you like a real simple lighting setup that, again, I developed in my Portrait of a Wrestler project, and then I've used in my newborns to give me a different lighting setup, to give me a different string to my bow, to give me something different to shoot for newborns. So that's just a simple 2 light setup either side. Marty Skirl on the right with his championship belt. The highest scoring image I had in the MPAs last year. Still didn't win its category. Lost to Jason Banbury. I'm not bitter though. Don't. One beer in, I'm not bitter. If we hang around long enough and I'm 3 beers in, we might have a different story. But I'm really proud of that image, and I'm proud of the one on the left as well. Moving on to the wrestler images. This is the first wrestling show that I shot. Lighting on a budget. What this is that when I went to my first wrestling show, I was desperate to photograph. This is the first wrestling show I shot in London for a company called Progress. I was desperate not to tread on anyone's toes and not to get in the way and not to be an idiot and not to be that photographer that they never invite back because he upset. All you have to do is upset one person and speak or look at them in the wrong way, and you're kind of done, really. So I didn't take any light. Sorry, I didn't take any. I took an ice light, but this wasn't even shot with an ice light. What I did, this is my little project, little mini project I did, which is just called Beyond the Curtain. I think I called it that. I don't know what I called it, but anyway, all it is, I just wanted to shoot the guys immediately after the match, and this came from a project I saw from a photographer who shot the New York Marathon, and she took a backdrop and no lights, like a grey backdrop, and as finishers finished, she allowed herself 30 seconds from them crossing the finish line to take their portrait, no longer. She just wanted that immediate 30-second impact of what it looked and felt like to finish a marathon. And for some people, that's a lifelong goal. And I know from personal experience that it's a real physical toll on your body and can be, I don't think I've ever finished a marathon and not been emotional. And I was just so taken by that project. I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to do that with wrestlers and just sort of get over the fact that, you know, we understand that it's an entertainment. It's a show that's put on to entertain, rather than a legitimate, you know, like sporting contest to see who is the best wrestler. But ultimately, it is a physical art form. It is the only performance art form for which a story can be told without the need for audio description or music. It is literally that simple, and it's part like athleticism, part improvisation. I can talk for hours about it, but I just wanted to sort of get that over in this series of images. This is one of a guy called Pastor William Eva, a lovely fellow who actually helped run the London Marathon a couple of years later, which is quite cool. And all this is there's a doorway behind me. So he's come through the curtain, which is just on the right hand side here, to a blank doorway, which I've just used as a backdrop. It's nice and rough. I kind of like that. And behind me is just a massive door that's open. And that's all that is. It's just light spilling through that door onto him. No lights needed for that. You just need a camera. That's lighting. That is lighting on a budget. I've just got a huge softbox behind me, and I've chosen my area, and I'm just sticking with it. And I created a wonderful series of images. I'd like to go back and sort of try that again. This is an image of Paul Robinson. That blood is legit. Paul Robinson is legit. Let's be honest. Paul Robinson is possibly the toughest guy I've ever met in wrestling. He is in modern parlance an hard bastard. He's just come back from a death match, and I've literally just sat him in this chair, told him not to wash off. Allowed myself a higher than normal light. I wouldn't normally put my light this high. This is going back to my speed light in a softbox on a tripod with a reflector. I'm not using the reflector in this instance. The softbox just off to my right here, pointing down towards the subject. It's a little bit higher than normal because I didn't really want to see his eyes. I wanted to air a little bit of mystery there. I wanted those eyes to be dark. I didn't want catch lights, and just the natural symmetry in which he's placed himself there just gives me a really, really striking image. Love that shot. His opponent in that match was Jimmy Havoc. This is what Jimmy looked like after the match. Oh yeah. Oh, warning. There might be some blood. I'm really sorry. If you're a bit squeamish, look away 5 minutes ago. So this is the way Jimmy looks. And once again, this is all legit blood. They hit each other with chairs and light tubes and barbed wire and baseball bats and all that kind of stuff to elicit an emotional reaction. I talk in my seminar, Capturing the Art of Wrestling, about this match at length. So I won't spoil it for you here. Needless to say, this is one of the most important, powerful series of images I've ever shot in wrestling, and I'm privileged to know both guys. I was privileged to be there in the night to watch the match, and I was privileged to be backstage to capture these images. They mean a lot to me. The next guy is a guy called Will Ospreay. If you Google Will Ospreay, YouTube Will Ospreay, you will see the most phenomenal, naturally gifted talent to ever, in my opinion, to ever set foot in a ring. He is. I must have seen live over 40 Will Ospreay matches. The last one I saw was last Saturday, and he still makes me like drop my jaw to the floor. Phenomenal. This is after he lost the title at Progress, and I've literally shot him in the same place, got him to look towards the light. One single light going across, but the story's told. The story's told. There's loads of detail in that. There's loads of little bits in there that I wanted to sort of get across, and that scored in the Society's convention last year. I've got a signed copy of that downstairs, which is cool. Next one coming up is a guy called Alistair Black. Tommy End, he was known here. He's called Alistair Black now, currently works for WWE. Because of the relationship I struck up with him, we still maintain a contact, and at times he'll be quite useful on social media, just giving stuff a like, which is really cool for sort of like your boosts, your posts, and it's just a lesson in sort of maintaining your contact with people. Now, what happened here? This was backstage at the Brixton Academy. I had a flashlight, but there was no light backstage, so my camera for the first half of the show, I couldn't picture focus on him because there was no light on the subjects that were coming back. So I got my ice light out and I thought, it's okay, I'll use my ice light as a modeling light and then just shoot with my speed light. But what had happened then was I basically had two lights on a tripod on a very narrow corridor, which was right by the entrance to the ring. So essentially I was just in the way. Going back to my original point about the Pastor William Eva shot, I don't want to be in the way. I almost want to be invisible. I don't want to be the idiot who's like, oh, you know, that kind of guy, really. I don't want that reputation. So I ditched the flashlight, folded it up, put it away, forgot about it, and just thought, sod it, let's use an ice light. And I just used the ice light on this roundabout ISO, I want to say maybe 2,500, something like that. I know that's not an ISO. It's somewhere around about there. The lens goes down to f2.8, focus on the eyes, get that light above him, and once again, how can you not take a good picture of this guy? Face paint, tattoos, costume, beard, easy to do. Next one's of Zach Gibson. This is another one with a softbox on the right hand side, single light setup, but we've gone the other way. Where we were wide on the previous shot, we've gone super close on this one, using the lens to focus in. It's contracted everything, compressed everything in that shot. He got a legit black eye during that match. That's manna from heaven from me. I want that sort of stuff, and they want that stuff seen as well. I shot a guy called Joseph Connors recently who got a shiner at a last show I covered, and he made a beeline for me saying, I've got a black eye, quick, get your camera. and I just love the intensity of this shot. I love the picture focus on the hair and the eyes, and I just love that look he's giving into the camera. And I love the fact that, again, it's post-match, you've still got the sweat on the brow. Once again, we're telling stories. Talking about telling stories, this is a ringside shot taken from above the balcony. This is a shot planned in prep. The success is based in preparation, so I knew where I wanted to be. I get information from the guys about what's going to happen in the match, what are the key points, what are the key moments. If I know what's going to happen in the match, I know where I need to be at a certain point. This is a mixture of both and luck. What happened in this match with this tag team, and Nathan and Rob always talk about this shot, which is lovely. And also down here, I've got to give him a shout out. This is Rob Brazier, who's an amazing photographer. You need to go and check out Rob Brazier's work. He's the other photographer at Progress. He's the ringside guy. He's the guy who really works hard, not me. I'm just I'm a fraud. What happened in this match? It's all about the crowd reaction, and there are certain elements within this crowd reaction that are they're legit to me like a Renaissance painting. The reactions that you get, and this is people utterly lost in the moment of a show. Like, and I don't know where else you find this. I don't know a movie theater or a play or anything where you find people reacting in this way. Maybe a football match, but that's legit sport. You know, that's, you know, this is This is structured theatre. And to elicit this reaction from this many people is amazing. The luck element to it is that the music accidentally played at this point. Now, when the music's played at the end of a match, that basically means match is over, you know, the match is won. But Nathan had actually kicked out at this point, and this wasn't the finish of the match. So you've got a mixture of reactions within here, where some people think that the good guys have won the title belts, and finally, you can see Joel's thrown up a big 2 here to say, no, it wasn't a 3, that was a 2. You got some fans who've seen his call and know that it's a 2. Some fans that are that have gone yep, no, they've won it. Utterly just like one of my favorite pictures. And from a social media standpoint as well, when I'm doing a business that provides a service for wrestlers and a business that provides a service for fans to buy pictures of their wrestlers, if you can put an image online that includes not only their favorite wrestlers but also themselves, that's retweet heaven. And that's where you start getting a bit more exposure and that kind of stuff like that. It's a smarter post to post something like that than it looks. This is just going into how the wrestling stuff now transcends outside of wrestling. This is a wrestler called Zan Phoenix, but this isn't her wrestler gimmick. This is what she does outside of wrestling. She does dancing. She does this sort of like hanging sort of, I forget what the name of it's called. Hanging from hoops. Oh, I've got a mental block. I'm really sorry. But she does that dancing, and she also does this fire dancing as well. She got blisters on her hands from this shoot because I was so lost in the moment of shooting her that I forgot that fire is hot. and that she's so close to this fire, and she was holding this pose, and I was going to her, I'll hold that pose, lift your head up, turn your head slightly towards me, that hand down, bring your hip out slightly, and all these little things I was saying, it was like too much. And she started to get blisters on her hands. This is just a simple, again, going back to complementary colors, understanding orange complements blue. Let's get those blue kickers in, and let's use that orange of the flames to really, really stand out. Last 2 images coming up. Thank you for sticking with me. I realize I'm overrunning. This is Andy Boy Simmons again. He came to me, the second wrestler I ever shot on the project. Andy's one of the most genuinely lovely people I've ever met in wrestling. And this is him in his wrestling gear, but this is him on a private commission coming to me and saying, I want a portrait of me and my dog. This is little Rocky. Rocky's amazing. And it's just a simple, I think it's like a 2-light setup. It's got a bit of texture on it. I love that. What annoys me about this image is that Rocky isn't looking at me. If Rocky was looking at me, I'd be gold. But then I've never shot an image that I'm 100% happy with. And if you have shot an image that you're 100% happy with, go back and look at it again, because you're probably wrong. What I love about this image here is this little paw up on the arm here. I just love that little walking paw up there. I love the mixture of this big muscly guy with this little cute little dog. It's just a beautiful moment. And again, I wouldn't have got this job to shoot him and get a private commission to shoot a pet portrait, essentially, had the wrestling portraits not been so successful. This is the last shot that I'm going to show you. This was the achievement of an ambition of mine. I had 3 goals left on my photography checklist, and I have achieved 2 of those 3. One now is going to have to wait until 2019. And if anyone wants to put in a word with the WPPI and tell them that they're wrong about my seminar and that my seminar is actually quite good, then please do so. That would be great. This is it here. These are the dancers, Kelly and James, that we met earlier, and we shot them individually. They've just moved house and they wanted a private commission to put something up on the wall. And like normally what you would do with a private commission is go, yeah, come into the studio, we'll do a nice shot of the 2 of you together, get it up on a 30x20. But I said, no, we won't do that. We want to do something creative with you. I know that you're dancers, I know that you can do stuff. So I just threw them out the idea of this, and like I hear it, this is the last thing I'm going to say, sorry. So I hear it all the time, like, oh, award-winning images, I see them, but they're all about makeup artists and fashion stylists and time, and like I can't achieve that because I work like this way and that like that. This is me just making a tiny little bit of extra effort to go a long way. So all I did was I suggested we do it outdoors. So we went down to Southsea Beach, which I know very well. I got lucky with the clouds on this day. I like the way that she looks like she's controlling this one, and I like the way that this one looks like it's erupting over his head. I just like the placement of those, and that was completely by chance and by luck. I employed a makeup artist on the day, and all the makeup artist has done is she's applied grey paint to them to make them look like statues. So he's got grey paint all over his face and all on his hands and all this, and she's got grey paint here. It's not immediately obvious, but when you see the print, it is. It was a really super duper windy day, so it's caught the tails and it's caught her dress, which is really great. So that's luck as well. And we got a little flash gun just off camera over here, just shooting in, give me a little bit of light because it was a really, really bright sunny day. That's all that image was. That image fulfilled goal number 1 for me, which was to win an award, an international award with a single image. And this won me Portrait, Lifestyle and Location Photographer of the Year, which means I can stop entering competitions, which is great news. So I can stop stressing out and being paranoid and asking myself questions. I won't stop entering awards. I quite like entering awards. They're good fun. But ultimately, I've done something different for them, and they love this. And this didn't go up as a 30 by 20. This went up as a 40 by 30 in their home, and I'm utterly pleased with that. I just love the. It's a lesson in simplicity. There's nothing complicated about this shot at all. It's about understanding pose, understanding composition, and understanding your subject, and that's all that is. If you've enjoyed tonight, and listen, thank you for sticking with me. I see we have lots of people online, which is cool. You can see me at the Society's convention in January. The superclass is on Saturday the 13th of January, 9 a.m. That's a 4-hour superclass where we will be using lights. I'll hold your hand, I'll answer questions, I'll bring along some wrestlers so you can have some fun with them, shooting them, and we're going to shoot with some lights that cost me £75 from B&Q. I'd love to see you there, so please get on board with that. If you can't get to that, get to me on the Sunday. Capturing the Art of Wrestling is a 1.5-hour talk that I'm super proud of. It's the talk I hang my hat on, even if you're not into wrestling. In fact, especially if you're not into wrestling, make an effort to come and see that, because it ain't about wrestling. It's about everything else, and it's about like the most emotional journey that I've taken photographically and professionally and personally in my life. I would love to share that with as many people as possible. That's why it's there. If you can't do either of those, then just thank you. I hope you've got something useful. If you can't get either of those, just go on your Instagram or your Twitter and give me a follow at Y2JimBob. That would please my heart greatly. I opened this beer, but because I've been talking so much, I haven't drunk any of it. So I'm going to take a swig of it now and pass you back to Jay. Thank you very much for joining me. All the best.
You know, since I've known you now, which is a good couple of years, you know, the enthusiasm has never failed, and that's what's really come across tonight, mate.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
But that's not just from me; that's from everybody in the panel as well. You know, and
Thank you.
I think your photography / wrestling name should be Whirlwind or something like that, or the Whirlwind. It's brilliant. I love it, mate. I'm not going to ask these in any particular order because there is so many of them, so I'll just go through them, and it kind of goes through. From the baby stuff first because of the order we sort of talked about.
Yeah, sure.
This came up a couple of times, which I thought was quite interesting. From a male photographer's point of view, with doing the newborn and the babies, do you have a female assistant, or are you comfortable doing it by yourself?
I'm 100% comfortable being a father. I'm 100% comfortable doing it by myself. I mean, and I like, I had a real bee in my bonnet about it 6 years ago, and I had to take a step back from that. I wanted to be the guy that did newborns, you know, like, and I wanted to be as famous as anyone else is currently, you know, doing seminars and training on newborns, because I just felt that the market had gone so far the other way that it was almost seen as a detrimental thing that you were a male photographer doing newborns. I've had to take a step away from that because you have to pick your hill to die on, and I just want to enjoy it. And I think I'm a dad, and the only thing I cannot relate to is I can't relate to being pregnant. I can empathize, and I can try and understand, and I know what my wife went through twice. But my wife actually pulled me to one side and she said, no, she said, you can understand everything about changing nappies and being up at night and, you know, all the highs and lows. But what you can't experience is pregnancy and giving birth. And she's absolutely right. So, yeah, no, I never have a problem. Often my wife helps out though.
Brilliant. Well, I thought she did, but I suppose the other thing that came up, I suppose, is just and sadly in this day and age, it's also the fact that, you know, men with children, but of course the parents are never away from the shoot anyway, are they? So
no.
yeah, absolutely brilliant. And
everyone's done.
We get that question quite a lot with the likes of thing, on the boudoir webinars and things like that when you're a male photographer. Well, with the boudoir sessions, yeah, we always work with a female assistant, whether it's Mark's wife or whether it is a female assistant. We always have it in
Yeah.
there. So, but remember, guys, that the answer to the question, you've answered it perfectly. The parent is always there anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. To that end, though, I would say if we do bump shoots as well. So if a lady wants a bump shoot that errs on the side of showing a bit more skin and whatever, then I'll immediately get Fliss in the room.
Brilliant.
Because it just makes sense to have two of you there. But more from a practical point of view, because you got all bits of fabric that need to be tied in and secured and lights held and reflectors held. It just makes sense to have two of you there,
Exactly how we do it here, mate. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about the fabric, because you mentioned it a couple of times, and I know you did mention it, and I think they missed it. There isn't anything particularly special. I think you just said you bought offcuts from your local fabric shop, right?
That was it. Yeah. No, I got a fabric shop around the corner that's always got a closing down sale since 2012.
And you know what? I've known you for a long time now, but I've never realised how cheap you are until tonight. I love it. Absolutely love it. Brilliant. Okay, so there's a question going back to that shot of the kids you did, the sixth form kids that you showed earlier on.
Let's go there. Yeah. The one I nearly didn't put in. Go on. Yeah.
The question was, from a composition point of view, was there any reason why you put the outer two facing out and the inner three facing in?
It was a toss-up. Okay, so I start from the middle working out. So it was a toss-up between the kid with the curly hair and the girl who is in the middle, being in the middle. But the first thing I had to look at was girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy. So I had 3 girls and two boys. So immediately it had to be girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. It had to be. So he can't go in the middle. And then, yeah, basically from a composition point of view, the other 2 girls were posed facing out from the picture, which gives you nice sort of, I guess, leading lines, I suppose, from the outside looking in. And then the boys are sort of facing in towards the middle. So they're kind of like everything's a little bit different from the next pose. That's all you're trying to get. You don't want 2 poses that are exactly the same because you want different points of interest.
Brilliant. Perfect, mate. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, no worries.
I know we didn't get into it tonight because obviously we're talking particularly about lighting. How much post-processing is involved?
In what? In what generally?
Generally, yeah.
Okay, so a baby shoot will consist of anywhere between 30 to 40 images that will take me about an hour to put together from raw to slideshow ready, and have the slideshow ready. So that I've got that down to about an hour. The wrestling portraits, like individually, like for example, that would have taken 2.5 minutes. So I try and get everything in camera.
That was going to be my next question. The core of everything we do in camera, and obviously post-processing where and when necessary. Perfect.
Yeah, occasionally I'll put that's right.
That shot, bud. Go back for us, which I reminded the one of the guys, the one who just lost this one, and I'm thinking, I've seen that image a million times, and of course I have seen it because of our very first webinar together, because we did do the portrait of a wrestler webinar. Soft plug, still available on the Photographer Academy. Go and check it out if you haven't seen it already. But it's the cover. It's either the very first. Is it the very first magazine we did? It might even be the very first magazine.
So this was goal number 2 on my list of 3 goals, was to get an image on the front cover of a magazine.
Well,
and you're the first guys to afford me that opportunity.
Issue 1 or issue 2, but I've got a feeling it's issue 1. I think you were.
It's issue 1.
You were the first, mate. You were issue
Thank you.
1. There we go. And I think.
Yeah.
I know James has been in a magazine. Which magazine was he in? You were in number 1. Perfect. Brilliant.
Number 1. Cover guy for number 1. So that was goal number 2. I've just got goal number 3 to do.
What's number 3? Oh, WPPI.
I alluded to it earlier.
Yeah,
I can't say.
Yeah, I can't help you.
Because they rejected me.
Happily put you back on front cover of the magazine this year, mate. It's a done deal.
That's cool.
Handshake and all that. Sorted. Back to the backdrops. You mentioned a couple of times about gelling. A few people are just not familiar with it. It's obviously just gel in the light, right? They would have asked a few people what's going.
Oh right, yeah. So like this one's got a gel on the front of the sort of like reflector head, just with a bit of sellotape.
Perfect. Yeah.
So that's that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And that obviously, hence there, you've got the ability as well, obviously. What color? So out of curiosity, is the pattern, is it white, black and white?
The pat it's it's exactly the same as you see in the next image, which is that one. So
Oh,
it's like a grey on black.
yeah, perfect.
It's a
Brilliant.
really dark fabric, really heavy and dark, but I love it.
Excellent.
Still got that one.
Okay, so I've got a lot of things that I want to share with you in a minute, which I thought was brilliant. Some of the stuff that's coming through.
Okay, go on.
Coming through. But I have a question.
Yeah.
For you. What's it like to have Santa as a father-in-law? And do you have to be nice all year long?
Do you know what? Is an anecdote. Yesterday we had a complaint about a television that we bought because it didn't have a wall mounting bracket on the back. Yeah. Right. So we sent my father-in-law offered to go and take it back to the shop to complain about it. Right. And they didn't have to give us any money back or anything. What they did was they upgraded us to the next TV. They gave us £100 off, so £100 refund for our inconvenience, and that was all because the sales girl behind the counter was wetting herself laughing because she couldn't believe that she was dealing with Santa. So it has its, and when you walk through shopping centres with him, you see children pulling at the sleeves of their parents and pointing.
Do your children think he's Santa?
No, they think he's Grandad.
That's all right, cool. But it's quite fair play. This is a good practical question. You referred a couple of times tonight to like 20 by 30s and 30 by 40s. As a general, is that the overall size when it's framed, or is that the print size?
It's always the print size. We very rarely deal with. I'll give a shout out. Can I give a shout out to a printing company?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah. So I'm an ambassador for the Print Foundry, who I would recommend, to use for your wall mounted stuff. They've, and I would never ever say that a supplier has never let me down. But what matters is that when things go wrong, it's how a company sorts them out for you. And in that aspect, the Print Foundry have never ever let me down. That's in the really rare occasions, because things always go wrong. You'll always get a package that delivers that a courier's kicked in the van. That's not the Print Foundry's fault. But when that happens, they sort it out for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I deal with them, they have a really good range of finishes on products. So our wall products are about the finish of them and not about the frame. Read into that what you will.
No.
So basically what I'm trying to say is a lot of our wall products are frameless. So it's literally, when you buy a 3040, it's a 3040. The print's a 3040,
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I thought this was a really good question just coming at the end here, but and really apt actually, because obviously we've talked about newborn, we've talked about your wrestling, and the question is, are you marketing them as two separate businesses? And I guess the answer
absolutely, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I'm if anything, I'm putting too much into the wrestling. That's my only problem because I follow passion. Like,
yeah,
and
we know.
I'll be completely honest. I am so privileged and lucky to photograph newborn babies. I consider myself so lucky to be the first guy to like that image. Like, when you consider it, that there's images that I've shot decades ago that are still on people's walls, and that is such a privilege. But my absolute passion is the wrestling, because it's a private passion of mine. So it's hard sometimes to sort of take yourself out of that and not spend all your time marketing that. But they are entirely there is. I was demonstrating with these images at the back that there is a crossover, and I have got weddings from people that I've met in wrestling, and I have got portrait sessions from people that I've met in wrestling. But the hard and fast rule is your newborn baby market is entirely different to your professional wrestling one.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Yeah. Just while I remember also, the picture of the guy with his dog, the one you just had on the screen. I think the next time that you're down, I think we need to recreate this shot with me and my little miniature Yorkshire Terrier Chewy, because I think that would be genius. I think it's
that'd be cool. I'd love to do that. Get your top off.
Yeah, absolutely. I get Chewy will do it. He's a proper poser. It'll be genius. And hence they talked me into having him by calling him Chewy, because I didn't want any more dogs. But we can call him Chewy, Jay, and I folded like an idiot.
Of course.
Yeah. But yeah, he's
Brilliant,
also a little
brilliant
swell
stuff.
now. But yeah, we'll make that happen. That'll be classic.
We call the Wi-Fi R2. It's not a pet, but I do like the fact that my Wi-Fi that's constantly breaking down and has a bad attitude, we call it R2.
I love it.
Anyway, go on.
You guys have clearly twigged that James and I are a bit of Star Wars nerds. So